Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the MX Endurance Podcast, where we look at everything that's been happening in the world of endurance sports. My name is Tim Ford, and I'm joined by the penultimate legend, the sexy shepherdess, sexiest voice in triathlon himself, James Bale. Mate, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey man, it's been a while. It's been a minute. I've had a bit of time off, haven't I? I don't know why. Just being sidelined for other characters and stuff. And did we completely miss a podcast last week?
I was going to say the people you were sidelined by last week was nobody because the episode
Yeah.
didn't come out. Because I had the best of intentions of so I'm in Phuket. I was here with Phoenix last week, and then I'm staying off for a couple of weeks of training. And I was with Belinda and Chris and everybody. And you're always like, oh, I'll just sit down with them and do it. It'll be super simple. Then you realize, oh no, these camps are fucking exhausting. And by the time you're done for the day, the actual last thing you feel like doing is sitting down and recording a podcast. So I think it got to like Thursday night. And I think Thursday was our latest night. We got back to the hotel at like 9:30 p.m. And I looked at Belinda and she said, are we doing this podcast? And I said, I don't think I could. I don't think I could actually bring myself to do it, to be honest. And then we intended to do it Sunday, but instead we went drinking. So yeah, no podcast last week. I think it's the first time we've actually missed an episode, with the exception of the week we took off in Kona. But I think it's the first time we've actually just missed an episode in like 2.5 years.
There was a tumbleweed last week, wasn't there? Because we didn't even say anything. I think we just allowed our listenership to go without for a week. You did get some messages though, people chasing you up saying,
yeah, no,
where's the podcast? So we're obviously in demand.
I mean, it's true, isn't it? And you want to create that demand, and too much of a good thing. So it's all about that false scarcity and science of economics or something. But yeah, mate, we are sorry, guys. It wasn't from it was just literally one of those times where I ran out of time. Like, I mean, you know this, mate, but I have so many different roles and things that I juggle when I'm not podcasting that it was just the perfect storm last week, to be honest.
You do other stuff. I thought your entire job was this once a week podcast. I thought that was it.
I mean, obviously the influencer life, mate. Being a weekend warrior, all those sort of bits and pieces that take up so much of my time. It has this. The little pricks on the camp. One of them called me a weekend warrior, and it cut me to my core. I was like, "You little shit! How dare you say this to me?" And I found out later it was one of the other guys who'd been like, "You should go and tell Tim he's a weekend warrior." And oh man, we had a really good camp last week. So again, for people who don't know, one of the things that I do is I organize these things called Phoenix Futures Camps. We organize 4 of them a year, and it's for 20, 16 to 18-year-olds who are talent ID'd, who are going to either go to the Olympics or turn to professional sports. And it's a high-performance camp for them. And I tell you what, mate, this camp we had in Phuket was the best. Like, we had 20 of the best kids. And it's funny because who I do the camps with, Belinda Grange is one of them, and John Stephenson. John Stephenson, an Australian sprinter, legend of track and field. And he's best mates with Usain Bolt. So most camps, he'll pull out his phone and he'll FaceTime Usain Bolt, and the kids lose their fucking minds, mate. And it's like, yeah, okay, we get it. You're mates with Usain, ha, 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 whatever. Whereas for me, this camp, because there was like 6 or 7 triathletes, and they were fucking frothers. Like, they loved it. I said, oh, do you guys want to talk to Joe Skipper? And they're like, yeah, we do. So I FaceTime with Joe, and they lose their minds. And then I got Tyler on the phone, and they losing their minds. And I was like, see, Johnny, it's not just you, mate. Like, you're not the only one who's got the connections, big boy. But then we also had the kids volunteer. Next level, mate.
Yeah.
No, what were you going to say?
I interrupted you. I was just adding in, Usain Bolt, I wonder what he's up to nowadays. What's he doing?
From what I've seen, sitting on private planes, to be honest, that seems to be every time I see him.
Yeah. I can imagine he's got some endorsements and sponsorships he's working his way through as he tends his retirement.
But it was good because what we got the kids to do, I say kids, the athletes to do on the weekend, we do these Phoenix Kids Triathlons. They're completely free for kids to basically get active. That's what the Phoenix Foundation is all about. So all 20 kids volunteered at the Kids Triathlon, and they both managed aid stations. And man, nice. it was so cool to see. Like, one of the aid stations, they set up speakers, and they were like splashing the kids with water and dancing around and everything. And it was phenomenal. I think there was one kid who was racing who hit the wall a bit and was like actually struggling to finish. And the entire aid station, like all 10 of these kids, literally cheered and walked with this person all the way to the finish line. And
nice.
as an organizer, you sit there and you watch it, and you're just like, man, how good is this? Like, how great is it that there's hope for future generations to see that there is like sportsmanship and positive impact and things like that. So it was a very fulfilling week. And then the Laguna Phuket Triathlon was on over the weekend, which I had entered. And again, why I decided to try to do this super hot and hilly race the day after a camp, I don't know.
Did you do it? Did you do it?
I did. I downgraded to the sprint. I did the sprint triathlon instead because I was knackered and we went out and had a few drinks after the camp ended. But I did the sprint triathlon. I think that was enough. That was enough for me. I mean, it's funny, mate. What camp finished on
That's
Saturday.
Not enough for me. That's not enough information for me. Where did you place in the sprint triathlon? Where did you place in the sprint triathlon?
10th, I think.
10th? Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah.
How many people were racing?
About 300.
Okay. All right. I'll let you off that.
Yeah, I got beat by a bunch of like 16 and 17-year-olds, mate. They were all like 6 minutes ahead of me. And I remember one of the kids on the camp.
It's because you're a weekend warrior, so you haven't got that ping.
Yeah. It's exactly right, mate. That's that. Well, in fact, for sure. One of the kids here on the camp, I was giving him a bit of shit before the race. I'm like, seriously, mate, if you don't beat me, you should retire. Like, I'm an old man. I'm no good at this. I'm a middle distance athlete. None of this sprint shit. And he said, oh, well, don't worry. I've got minutes over you in transition. I was like, yeah, dude, if there's one thing I'm very good at in triathlon, it's transition. Like, I'm a transition pro. He said, mate, I'll be minutes ahead of you. I said, all right. I said, if you don't beat me out of transition for a minute, I can't remember what the prize was. So I come out of the swim, I'm right on his shoulder, and I'm like, you've made a huge error here, champion. Like, I've got you covered. Racing, helmet on, out I go, make my way to the mountain line. I did a Magnus Ditlev, mate, because I didn't put my race belt on, because I couldn't go to the race brief the day before the race because I was working. They made me leave my bike, do the 400-meter run back to transition to pick up my fucking race belt. And he beat me by a minute in transition. I was like, God damn it.
Mate, if you're going to rook out, you're going to rook out. It still counts. Counts.
Exactly.
Love it.
He got me. Oh, I took it on the chin. I was like, hey, you got me, mate. Like, I can't do anything about it. But yeah, it was just great. So this is a race that I've done a number of times before. And again, for anybody out there who in my mind, Laguna Phuket Triathlon is one of the true classics on the triathlon scene. I mean, the list of winners of this race is incredible. Like, basically every, it's a who's who of triathlon have done this event. It's gone for 30 odd years. I think next year's the 30th anniversary of it. And it's got these hills in it called the Niton Hills. And mate, they are honestly the most horrific climbs I've ever done in any triathlon ever. Like, they're awful. But because of that, that's the best part about it. It's this absolutely hideous climb. And then you got the run, and it's hot.
Is it steep or long? Super steep. Okay.
So you do one, and they're not very long. They're probably, both about 5 or 10 minutes each.
Okay.
And that's just because you're going so slow. But you do the first one, and then you drop down, and it's a steep descent. Then you ride along this beach, and then do a few bumps. But this really steep one has got you go around this corner, it's got a 30% gradient. So you're going around this thing like it is hideous. And because it's Thailand, everything's a bit mossy. So the road surfaces sometimes get a bit slippery too. So the first year I raced here was a different race, but I was climbing up this climb out of the saddle and my back wheel started to spin. I actually lost traction on the course. So I had to unclip because I nearly fell over. And then I'm standing on this, climb like this. I had to push my bike up the hill because I couldn't get going again.
Love it.
I was so embarrassed. But it's full on, and it's a tough race. But the best part about this race is the after party. The after party is the stuff of legend, because it used to be the last race of the season. So all the pros would come here, last race, and everybody would party. And the after party did not disappoint. I think I got back to my villa at about 2:30 a.m. on Monday morning.
Nice.
And I was
flying, and luckily you weren't flying anywhere, were you? So you didn't have to worry about that. But loss of traction on hills, mate, is something I'm very used to. Devon roads, it's constant.
Mate, you should come here and dominate then. You'd be fine. Apart from the fact it's 10,000 degrees, the conditions would suit you.
Yeah. A man who hasn't ridden bike for some time, should definitely come and do that triathlon. Absolutely.
Well, mate, we have rambled a little bit. We should remind the people that this podcast is the official podcast of MX Endurance, the world's premier endurance sports community, created by 4-time world champion Chris McCormack. Mate, MX Endurance going through some changes at the moment. But what's something you like about the community?
Well, at the moment, mate, it would be the air of anticipation because of those changes that you keep dangling in front of everybody, and you're not really releasing a huge amount of information at the moment. But there's a sharp intake of breath within the community at the moment, because there are going to be some exciting changes coming. I saw a post the other day from someone asking for an update on next year's race team. I don't know whether you're in a position to give that update yet, Mr. Ford, or not. But the air of anticipation is building, and I quite like this time of year for that, because every year brings new exciting challenges for MX Endurance.
I think it's just a case of it's one of those things where we want to actually nail the message in this time. So we're actually working behind the scenes pretty hard with, plans and all this sort of stuff. But I mean, it's probably worth noting that we're probably going to take a slightly extended break from the podcast this year. Normally we take the 2 weeks off over Christmas, but I think just because of the changes we have happening, we'll probably shut things down. Maybe maybe not next week, the week after. I'm not too sure. Just because there's almost a complete overhaul happening. But yeah, we are working hard for these things, but I think it's going to make what we do different and good. And yeah, it's going to be good to see, because I mean, you always hope your changes are for the positive. So, but it is nice to have a little bit of anticipation. Yeah, it's good. Like to lead people on a little bit, but again, the podcast will continue in some way, shape, or form. There will always be a triathlon podcast that you guys can tune into to get your hot triathlon fix. And I mean, it's worth noting, I'm going to Bahrain for the 70.3. I think I leave in like 2 weeks. Yeah, basically in 2 weeks I'll be there. And I'm staying at the team hotel. So I'll be with all the athletes who are there. And I'm going to try to grab interviews with as many of them as I can as well. So that might be maybe that'll be our bonus episode. I'm not too sure yet. Or we might just randomly put out an episode with a few interviews. But again, also no guarantees, because who knows what I'll have, mate. I'm racing. I'm there as an athlete, I'm not there for working. So we'll see what happens. But mate,
are you gonna find that? Was it 4 minutes? Are you gonna find that 4 minutes this year?
I don't think so. Not the way I'm feeling at the moment. I think this year's almost a write-off for me, to be honest. It's just, yeah, I don't know. I was in good form at the start of the year, and then all the travel and issues and stuff kicked in. So just survive this year and then rebuild into next year, I guess. But it's just good to be here again and, starting to put in the decent training again. I mean, I've got my TT bike and just doing quality time on it. And I mean, I was telling you before we hit record, like Phuket's basically my unofficial triathlon home. This is where I've come and done a lot of my training in the past. So to be back on the roads and stuff that I haven't been here for 3 years, to be able to do it's pretty good, and it makes me get energized again for it. So I went out for a beautiful 125 kilometer ride this morning in the heat, avoided all the rain, saw it's so good to ride here. Just take a quick pit stop at a random 7-Eleven, enjoy the air conditioning, pay 20 cents for a big bottle of water and tip it all over my head and keep going. It's pretty good. So we'll see what happens.
Nice. Sounds like heaven.
We've got it from a triathlon point of view. It absolutely is. And I mean, Jürgen Zach, again, a lot of people will know who Jürgen is, one of the greats of the sport. He's based here full time, and he's got his Z coaching crew that I'm going to slide into their sessions this week, as well as, friend of the podcast, Lucy Richardson, my mother. I know you're listening, Lucy, but she's here too. So great to catch up with Lucy. Haven't seen her in, again, almost 3 years. So it's, like I said, it's been a bit of a coming home. But again, how about you? Quick update injury, mate, because your ankle was a bit buggered for a while. How's the ankle?
Yeah, my ankle is actually pretty much better. I went out for a run the other day and rolled it again, and I shat the bed because I hit a bit of wood, and it just tilted my foot enough to make me roll it, and I was on the floor. But luckily, I thought I'd done a load of damage, but I just walked home, and 2 days recovery, and it's back to normal again. So, but I can run on it now without a problem. So I'm through that. I'm doing a lot of running, and I'm doing a lot of weightlifting, and that's about the extent of my training at the moment is running and lifting weights.
Let's throw James Bale under the bus a little here. This guy is a professional triathlon coach, and his idea from returning from a trail running injury is to focus on trail running with uneven surfaces, give up cycling, the sport that keeps your ankle in a locked position, and it takes off a lot of the impact from running, and then return to running off road.
I was on road when I rolled it again.
I don't understand why my injury's taking so long to heal. It's like,
I've done a lot of rehab on that ankle, and I did do a huge amount of rehab on it, and I'm focusing on the strength element of things at the moment. And it's a strange thing, Mr. Ford. I'm going to throw you under the bus a little bit here now, but okay. It was a few months ago, I think, you messaged me and said, if you want to get back to triathlon quicker, doing your 70.3s and get your fitness back up, then you need to stop hiking and trail running as much as you are and focus on the rehab and the running. And I was just, I've reached a point in my training where I'd had this time off. I'd realized I've done triathlon since I was 14 years old. And I've been every year training, trying to chase this or that or the other. And I think I realized I wasn't enjoying it as much as I used to. And the forced period of time off, doing other things, trying other things, bit of trail running, bit of hiking, and I was really loving it. And when I got that message from you, despite it being from the best intentions of you saying, well, we need to get you back, so you need to stop hiking and stop training, my brain was just like, no, I don't really want to. I want to stay doing what I'm doing because I'm really enjoying it. And so I'm just exploring other avenues at the moment. I'm going to do some ultra runs next year, some ultra marathons. The competitive spirit is still there. I'm just going to apply it in a different sort of arena for a minute.
I completely get that, mate. Like even myself, I think, I thought I'd sort of lost interest in racing. And then again, like on the weekend, I was like, no, I still like this. Like I still actually want to do this. It's just, and I always find it funny when I see like age groupers make this big declarative statement, I've retired from triathlon.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Well, not really, mate. Like it's
not sure you've got anything to retire from, have you?
Yeah. And then it's like, well, I'm just not doing it for the moment. Like, the sport's not necessarily, or maybe it is, but it's not going anywhere.
No.
And if it doesn't, this is what I say to people as well, who like when you see someone really trying to force themselves back from a serious injury, and it's like, just chill out, man. Like you're not playing for sheep stations.
No.
Take your time. If you want to walk away from here and do something, do it. It's I think sometimes that there's this pressure that it's like I find it odd with the sport where people are like all in. And I was thinking about this last night. Like, there's so many, we call them, the professional age groupers out there. These guys who aren't pro, they don't race for money, but they basically train full time and they don't really work. Like they almost give up work. Often they're like dreaming of becoming a pro. I'm thinking it's sort of quite unique to triathlon as a sport, isn't it? Where I mean, you don't see many guys our age who play football who go, that's it, I'm giving up work. I'm going to be a full-time football player and try to make it into
the
Premier
League. We're doing 4 or 5 sessions a week with strength conditioning on top. And that's where I'm at the moment, just taking a step back from the race. I still love the sport. I still love coaching my athletes. I just don't feel like forcing myself into that hole right now because
you say you want to throw me under the bus, and I think it's time for real talk now, listeners and viewers. The reality is that the last time you raced properly was Bahrain 2019, where you got absolutely decimated by me. So I think what it is fair to say is in fact, I
you retired me. Did you retire?
I've retired you. To quote John Stephenson, it was a crime scene out there. Somebody called Triple O because it was a murder scene.
I just 3 weeks out of hospital, wasn't I? 3 weeks out of hospital, having hooked up to a steroid drip. I was racing for myself that day, mate. I was racing.
Walk 14 miles to the start line uphill. It was weirdly snow, and you had to walk.
Everyone loves an excuse, don't they? But
you were very good. Like again, credit where it's due. I think you did very well in Bahrain that time. I think it was good to see you finally actually string together a swim bike run that was. Obviously it wasn't your best, but it was from where you were at that point in time. I think it was good. So. Yeah. Again, the sport's not going anywhere. I'll still get you on a race course, mate. Don't you worry.
Don't get me wrong. I'll be back doing. I just found myself thinking: do I want to do right now, where my life is, how busy I am? Do I want to do 3 sports a week plus strength and conditioning on top of that, or do I want to just do what I'm really, really enjoying, which is lots of hiking, bit of running, and lifting weights? And the time cost benefit of that is huge for the moment. And rather than doing 3 sports badly, I thought I'd try and focus on doing one quite well. So I'm going to be, if I could stop rolling my fucking ankle, that would be nice.
You have to find a marathon, because one of the things I want to do next year is I want to run a sub 3 hour marathon. So we should find a marathon.
Let's do that. I've entered a half marathon in May in the UK. So that's going to be my sort of launch pad into the year.
I'm not doing it in the UK though. It has to be somewhere nice.
All right. Let's pick a marathon somewhere sunny and go and do that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe the Singapore Marathon. Well, that wouldn't be ideal for running a sub 3 hour because it'd be hot as fuck.
It'd be hot as fuck.
I think it's a nighttime run. Though. That'd be cool. Wouldn't that be cool?
I would just 26 miles of rolling my ankle, mate. That's what that would be.
It's like actually not injured. You're just hot as fuck. You're like, I rolled my ankle.
How about we do that? How about we do that one? How about we do that one up north of me that is a night run, but the sun doesn't go down because it's
in Norway.
Yeah, in Norway, yeah. The marathon up there that's in the middle of the night, but it's bright.
Well, I'm going to have to do it. That's not a bad idea. I've got a trip to Norway. I have to go to Norway next year, so maybe that's what we do. I like that. I was meant to be going anyway, so cool. That's an all-fair discussion. Anyway,
Yeah.
we have some races.
We're boring our listeners now with our private lives.
But let's talk about some races. And the first race I want to talk about is Arizona. And as we said a few weeks ago, this isn't going to be a case of us reading through the race reports that much, more our discussions around the race. Now, how much have you followed the Arizona race? Did you see the results? Did you watch any of it? Like, where are you?
Yeah, no, I've seen the results. I know. I didn't watch it because it just didn't work time zones for me. But I've seen the results. I've seen what happened, and the results pleased me somewhat.
I mean, I've got some brief notes here. So we'll start with the women's race. Lauren Brandon was out of the water with a 2-minute 40 lead over Sarah True and 5 minutes 8 seconds over Sky Monch. Monch and True came together and caught Brandon around halfway point of the run. On the bike. And off the bike, they had an 8.5 minute lead over her. Then on the run, Monch and True were together. And by the halfway point, True had about a 34-second lead. It was at this point that she picked up the pace and she, in the end, won comfortably with an 8:42.38, while Sky came in second with 8:47.28. And Danielle Lewis finished in third with 9:03.18. Now, a few things here that I really like is Sarah True, again, an athlete that I speak extremely highly of, doing what she does really, really well. And then to see Sky Monch again, late season race after a big year of racing from Sky to finish second. And again, to by all means do it quite well, I think is extremely positive. What did you think about the women's race?
It's quite the gap between first and second. I mean, it's good to see Sky up there in second. I love Sky to bits. She's one of my favorite athletes on the planet. But that's a huge gap in the swim, isn't it? Laura Brandon put 5:08 into her over the swim. To bring for Sarah and Sky to come together and bring that gap back is, that's a solid effort and to be expected. But that's quite the gap between first and second. Sarah must have been on it on that run.
This isn't necessarily the women's specific thing, but I guess this is just a bit of a me in general thing with this is like, and you might feel the same way, or you might think I'm being ridiculous, but it's starting to feel like this year's maybe had too many races. Like even I'm getting a little bit burnt out now on.
Do you think?
Fuck, there's another one.
Yeah, Jesus, I know what you mean. And it's not even like it's a different sensation to how it was a few years ago. We sound like we're just complaining for the sake of it. But a few years ago, our point would have been there's too many IronMan races and therefore not enough stars in any single race. And so you'd have one person winning by a margin that was inconceivable and the rest of the names you hadn't heard of. And so that was kind of where we were at a few years ago. But now we're at a place where you know the names because you know who's racing, but they're you almost find yourselves, these people are being pushed across too many races in a year, and therefore it's denting the racing we do see when we get to this point in the year.
I also wonder if it's a case that, Kona was quite a highlight for me this year. And it's like sort of, I mean, I've always felt like after Kona, the year sort of drops off a little bit. But maybe because we are more engaged or aware this year, that it's just like, oh, we're still going. Oh, okay. Oh, we're not done. There's also Ironman Israel this weekend. Like there's Ironman Western Australia.
It's like the cycling season after the Tour de France. Watching the Vuelta a España always feels like a bit of a come down, but the season continues.
Yeah. I don't know what it is because again, obviously I was excited to see all the races happen last weekend. But I was also, firstly, I think you still make an excellent point that if you took the fields from Arizona, Cozumel, and what's happening this weekend in Israel and put them all into one race, you'd have a much better field and a much better race, I guess. I do feel like, and again, I'm just going off on a thing. One of the big things we were discussing this week was this idea of how to fix long course triathlon. And Marcus, who works for Mana, probably the number one triathlon frother in the world. He said the same thing. He's like, you need to have like a top 20, and that's your professionals or top 20, and then you have elites, and then the top 5 elites every year go up, and the bottom 5 go down every year, and there's set races that are the pro races, and then everything else is elite, and some sort of points-based system. And again, I was like, he's not wrong,
no,
because what you do is you then give these second tier or 20 to below athletes a chance to shine at their own races, rather than going to a race where you've got a Joe Skipper, who'd be a top 20, a Magnus Ditlev would be a top 20, a Sarah True would be a top 20, Sky Monch would be a top 20, and come in 5th, 6th, 7th and not really getting that much out of it. Whereas if you suddenly take out, if you look at some of these races, let's say you took Sarah True and Sky Monch, Sky was second in 8:47, Daniela Lewis was 9:03, mate. That's like what's that, 20 minutes? Right? No, not 20, 15 minutes behind. Like, you take those two out, and suddenly this race would be great for those people. And again, this isn't a race that's properly broadcast or anything, but it still would give them a bit more of an opportunity to shine. And for the viewers, you'd see Sarah True, Sky Monch racing against, the same people who were in Cozumel,
exactly.
and the same people who were then in Israel. Like that, I just think that there has to be some sort of way where, I mean, I'm starting to sound like one of those old guys, but like there's too many of these titles now. There's too many, like winning an Ironman. It's like, it's good, well done, but it's not like it's...
Agreed. It's a coupling at the moment with there's still too many races, but there are athletes are being pushed across too many races at the same time. Now, if that's balanced, if every athlete, like you say, if you have a top 20 who are the pros and they're all having to race the same races, then you're having the same collection of people pushed across the same amount of races, and you're not getting that disparity quite so visible, if you know what I mean, because people are going to fatigue at the similar sort of levels as the year unfolds.
Yeah. Again, maybe it's just that at some point something has to give, I reckon. And I don't know whether, I mean, you can sort of see the PTO trying, but I think, what is it, the top 50 ranked automatically get a spot to their events, and then the rest is a wild card. And I mean, I think I've said it when we've discussed those races. Take out the prize money that you give from 20th and below. Let's say top 20, the prize money is a little bit less, but then you put more prize money into the broadcast of that lower tier race. And it's like ITU. You have your PTO events, and then you might have your PTO tour events or something, like some sort of differentiation that is actually about creating, because you've got different narratives then, don't you? You have obviously who's winning the races, a bit like, who's winning the races, who's winning the series. You still have your one day world championship. You might have the world title and the world championship, or however you do it. But then you have the race for relegation, like who's going up, who's going down. There's pressure on the athletes. Maybe those top 20 can, because again, another thing I'd like to talk a little bit about is, I heard on Joe's podcast this week, he was talking about pros devaluing themselves by undercutting each other. Maybe the top 20 can have like minimum cost or something. So suddenly the prices of sponsorship in the sport stop going down, because you'll do it for sponsorship, let's say, used to be 50,000, then you got someone, I'll do it for 40, I'll do it for 30, I'll do it for 20.
If you've only got a field of 20 true professionals and the rest are elites, then you haven't got this sliding scale of, well, this woman or man is going to cost this much, this one's going to cost this much, this one's going to cost this much. But then it gets tempting for those sponsors and partners to go, oh, we'll go a couple more down, because then it's like another 500 off. Or we go a little bit further down, doesn't make a huge amount of difference, and it's free because they'll just take the product. But then they just take a step back and they found themselves a mile away from where the actual value was, which was up here, because they've allowed themselves to slide down so far. Then they don't get any returns, and then they go, well, this fucking sport ain't worth anything to us, and they don't come back again. And that's what we're finding, I think, within the sport, is partners and sponsors going too far down this sliding scale, not finding the returns they want, and then abandoning the sport altogether.
Whereas if you suddenly have this top 20, and let's say they do what you say, look, let's go with the top 25 this time. We'll go the 5 top ones. We'll give them $1,000 each in a discount code to put on their Instagram. The damage I think it would do, and not to say that those guys are going to be bad athletes, but the perception is, your product isn't good enough to be used by the top 20, because let's say the top 20, that there is a significant jump, or like I said, a minimum standard. Then, because that that's the creme de la creme, those athletes, like if you're not sponsoring one of those athletes, and it almost creates the competition between the brands again. Because at the moment, it's not like, there's very few that you could probably count on, 2 hands, how many athletes are actually having brands compete for their sponsorship with it.
The brands have all the power at the moment,
shouldn't be,
really.
But they shouldn't, and that's why I think if you had...
Because that power in their hands devalues the worth of a sponsorship as well, because it peek behind the curtain. If you're a consumer, you're like, that athlete's using that, it must be the best in the world. It's like, that athlete's using that, they're getting paid that much to use it, that one's getting paid that much to use it, and they'd probably turn around and say, well, actually, this one's the best if someone else paid them next year. It's the importance of those relationships need to be significant.
Yeah, and communicated better. Anyway, that was I still think it's the way. Hey, and let's say that elite wave isn't like let's say you want to have a go at it. Like, oh fuck, I feel like let's test my luck out this week. I want to have a go at the elite wave.
I feel I'm in the perfect shape right now to have a go at that elite wave.
Well, again, we know that you've been able to swim with the big man Javier Gomez before, held his feet. So it's where you belong, to be honest, mate. Like, I think it's natural.
Both pectorals cramped up, both of them.
Was that from flexing at the start to intimidate him, or from actually swimming? Like, which was it?
Yeah, that was just before we'd hit the water, mate. I was.
Look
Where's
out,
the
Javier.
gym? Where's the gym, Javier? He must be around here somewhere.
I'm just going to go over here. But because again, like I look at this, the three races, and theoretically, Israel should be the big one. I'd forgotten it was happening. Like while you were talking, I was trying to get up the start list so we could actually cover it a little bit. Just because, again, it's like we've just had two, decent fields race. I mean, I think the Arizona field, especially the men's race, well, both and the women's, was exceptional for a late season race. In Israel, it's like, okay, I know Daniel Beckergaard's racing, and other than that, I'm like, oh, I'm not too sure. But let's talk about the men's race because Joe Skipper, friend of the podcast, Joe finished his season off with style. He was out of the water about 3 minutes behind Ben Canute and Andrew Horsfall-Turner in 11th position. And again, for Joe, he swam a 50-minute swim, very good. He very quickly rode to the front of the race, and by about 30K, him and Kristian Hogenhaug, your friend, just put the foot down. They got off the bike 5 minutes ahead of Ben Canute and about 8 minutes from Sam, or 8.5 minutes from Sam Long, and 13:42 over Matt Hansen. Then on the run, after about 12K, Joe dropped Kristian and went on to win the thing. What's of note is Matt Hansen, as I said, came from 13:42 down to run his way through to second. So you had Joe win in 7:46, Matt Hansen in second, 7:49.48, and then third, Ben Canute off his second place at 70.3 worlds and his Ironman debut, 7:51.25. What did you think of this performance or these performances, mate?
Yeah, I saw Joe say that he got on the bike and he had a plan to ride at a certain level and work his way through the field. But he said his legs were feeling so good, he just, went for it. And I love that about Joe because he is the kind of athlete who's got that kind of natural feel for where he's at, as opposed to thinking, well, I've got to stick to my plan because this. He's very intuitive about, actually, I'm feeling good. I can trust this sensation of feeling good because I know it's going to go in a certain direction. And so he rode through the field a bit quicker than he was expecting and went on to win. Again, that's quite the difference between first and second place. But a good race nonetheless. And I'm pleased to see Ben Canute up there on the podium in his Ironman debut. That's quite a long way that Matt Hansen had to work his way back up. I mean, that's a hell of a build back up to second place.
Mate, can run like the absolute clappers. We know this about Matt Hansen.
Does he still got the arm thing? Because I love the arm thing.
Again, interestingly though, I think he got out of the water in a similar position to Joe, and it's the bike, which again, it shows that. Yeah, I think for Joe, this has got to be one of Joe's actual very polished performances. I think his run was probably way off where even Joe wanted it. I was messaging Joe because they've put up that reel of Joe finishing. It's actually awesome. It's got this great song over the top of it. And I said, mate, you look absolutely fucked. And he's like, that's because I was. Like, he's getting to the finish line. It looks like he's barely moving at this point. But I think if you look at Joe, 50-minute swim, very, very good for Joe. And I was talking with somebody because we were talking, who was I talking? I think it might have been Belinda Granger or maybe Amelia Watkinson yesterday. We're talking about how we're in this period where the Norwegians are so dominant. And I said, look, I think they are, but I still think there are athletes who could beat them. And I'm saying, again, if you look at Joe at sub, again, whatever, he swam 54, 55. It was a bad swim for Joe. You put a swim like this, and suddenly that's 3 minutes that he lost by is suddenly neutralized. And the whole race dynamic changes. There is
yeah, I mean, the sub 7, sub 8 for Joe, he did so well. And it was emotional watching him do so well that weekend, being that we were there. But it was so suboptimal for him coming in on that. Only the swim, in my mind, it was the swim. He could have found some stuff on he had more time with the team. Maybe the bike would have gone a bit better. Maybe the run would have gone a bit better. But coming in, the way he really lost it, coming in with only a week's notice, was the swim, because it was
100%.
It was such a fucking for him, because him and Alistair were changing places. They didn't have time to even coordinate where they were going to be, what they were going to do. He would have found a little bit more time on that swim. And looking at a result like this, he could have found a lot more time on that swim. And that would have made the race a real race at sub 7, sub 8, shoulder to shoulder type thing. And that would have been amazing.
Like I said, I think it goes to show that while we've got this period where Kristian and Gustav are so dominant, which is great because they are incredible, I still don't feel like it's still not, to me at least, a sure thing. And that's not to say that, Joe would go out and beat them every time he raced them. But I think it shows that it's not just Joe, but there are others of that sort of level that could. I mean, I don't know if you saw the interview at the end. The thing I really liked about this was, again, we know Joe really well. Did you see his post-race interview where he got quite emotional?
I didn't. I haven't seen that, no.
Yeah, so I know that I was talking with Joe and I had a chat with his mum. So I know his mum and dad were over there with him. And that's what he got asked. It's like, what's it like to do this with your family watching? And he got emotional. He's like, it means the world to me to have my family here and then have my family and friends who I know are tracking along. Like to do this for them is really great. And again, it's a sort of a side we don't see of Joe that much. He's, Joe's the lad, the funny guy, does his mockery podcasts and stuff. But I found it very refreshing, not refreshing, but like good to see that, this is a guy who puts his heart and soul into his racing, and to have the, to finish the season. Like I was thinking, like, we know that he had the suboptimal start to the year. He got COVID. He had that bad South Africa race, missed St. George, came in a sub, but this would have to be one of his better seasons, I reckon. If you actually look at the narrative throughout it, going from what happened, how it started, to coming in a sub at the last minute, going on to win Wales the way he did, then his top 5 finish at Kona. Now this, like, yeah, it was great. And like I said, I think it was a very rounded performance from him. The other thing around this is Ben Canute. His Ironman debut. I mean, 7:51 on debut ain't fucking about. And we saw what he's capable of at 70.3 worlds. Like, he's another athlete, I think, who we could see who could start to do some real damage to long course racing, because I don't know, mate. It seems like, I don't know. I just feel like it's a weird period of the sport at the moment. And I was talking with Macra about this last week, and he said he feels like it's a bit weak. And it's not that there's not good athletes. I just think there's only a handful of good athletes. And yeah, like somebody like Ben Canute coming up is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben Canute is a guy who, he's had some very solid results across his career. I think he's the kind of athlete where the real long course style of racing might suit him more than the results we've seen from him so far, even throughout his successful career to this point. So we might see him bounce on to even further success across the Ironman distance. I hear what Chris is saying about the weak. I don't think it's weak, because I think you're seeing faster and faster performances.
Shallow is the term you use, sorry.
Yeah. A lot of that will come from technologies and stuff, on the bike and things. But yeah, I hear you. I think we're seeing some very high quality racing at the pointy end, but it's not reverberating down through the field. There's a big step for everyone to take to get to that point. I think once they've initiated Tim and James's top 20 professional field idea, which they'll probably implement next week, having heard this podcast. What does it come out on Friday?
Yep.
So yeah, expect then things will start to improve, I reckon.
Yeah, I know. Now I see you've dropped this in quickly. We'll move on from that, but again, I don't know. We'll go to the next things. Ironman Cozumel happened over the weekend. Now, talking about it, like, I look at this, I don't have a lot to say about this race, to be honest. I think it's sort of, in the men's race, went the way we expected it, albeit actually, no, sorry. Before we move on to Iron Cozumel, I do want to touch on Sam Long, because again, we kind of forget that Sam Long raced Arizona, and he had some back problems, I think, but Sam's had a rough year this year. Like, where do you think Sam Long's at?
I don't know, mate. I mean, on an emotional roller coaster, he seems to be. Where am I going to go with this? We complain a lot about professionals posting generic training bullshit on their Instagrams and stuff, and we're like, for fuck's sake, put something real up there. Put something that interests people up there. And you see what Sam Long has been putting on his social media about the struggles he's having, and one day you're the hammer, one day you're the nail, and I value that insight into where he's at. I think that's good for the sport, and it's good for athletes who aren't professionals to see that side of things, where every day is not just a shiny Instagram picture where you're bouncing along feeling amazing. That said, I worry about his mindset a little bit and where he's at, and looking back to the Collins Cup and the little explosion of emotion that came out of just a fairly vanilla comment from Sam Laidlow to him, which was, in Sam's mind, I'm sure, meant to just be a sort of a jokey, let's have a bit of a pretend rivalry thing for the cameras. And Sam Long then took it to a very personal level and stormed out the room and had a little bit of a dummy spit about it all. I worry that he's on his emotions are at a point where his responses to things are quite dramatic.
Mm.
I don't know whether
Yeah.
your question was more around this sort of where his
No.
mindset's at, or more about the sporting side of things. But that's my interpretation of where Sam Long is at the moment.
I mean, I watched that again. I think we even might have said it. I can't remember if we said it on air or off air, but that Collins Cup thing, I think I walked away and went, I don't think he's in a good place mentally.
Yeah.
And but then he did that race, and I thought, okay, well, he's used it. Like the way he performed at the Collins Cup, I thought was excellent. I was like, here we go. This is the Sam Long of old. This is the Sam Long that I like to see. I don't think Sam Long should be racing Ironman at the moment. I think for where he's at in his career, he's very young and he's very good at that middle distance. He just needs to start getting some wins on the board again and rebuilding that confidence, because a confident Sam Long is a dangerous Sam Long.
Totally.
And I mean, I saw that he might have had some back problems, I think he came out with, and I completely agree. I like that he puts out the raw stuff, and I think he cops a lot of unfair abuse online.
Yeah.
Like a lot of unfair abuse, because I think we need more Sams in the sport. But I feel like he needs to start really looking at how he's approaching things this year, or how he's approached things this year, and he needs to start making some changes. Now, I don't know what those changes might be. Maybe it's the way he went on and did a holiday in Europe. Again, it's your job, mate. I get the idea of whatever, but really starting to set himself up for success. And to be honest, mate, there's a lot of athletes I think at the moment who need to do that. I think Sam Long is one who needs to do it. Rudy von Berg, another guy who really needs to do this, because Rudy is also another athlete that I would consider top tier or capable of being a top tier athlete, who has consistently failed to deliver this year and has left me absolutely questioning what the hell is going on with Rudy von Berg. Another guy that I thought would do very well in Cozumel, a race we'll talk about, ended up in the hospital, 20th in Dallas, didn't really fire in Kona. It's just these guys who we know are capable of good seem to be doing things that don't seem to be good for them. I mean, Henry Schooman, we know, is coming back from his injury. Tyler Mislachuk's found it a bit tough coming back from his injury. Like, there's all these athletes out there that have had things come up in the this last year. I think has been really interesting for a number of athletes, and it's the women as well. There's women who are, I mean, Danielle Arif, she's either right on or she's way off. Like, I don't know what it is, but I do think that some of these guys, like a Sam, needs to go down. And again, it's very easy for me to sit here in Phuket in my villa looking over the pool and say this, but like, Sam is capable of being a successful professional triathlete. But whatever he's done this year has not enabled him to have that success that we all know that he's capable of. And once that mindset does become a thing, maybe that is why it's almost like not karma, but you kind of create situations where bad things can happen. Like that penalty. Definitely, I still don't care what people have said to me online. I still don't think it's Sam's fault. I think he got entrapped.
Keep talking. I've got to get my laptop charger.
But maybe because he was in a situation where he felt the need to prove something because of the bad year he's having, is why he dug so deep on the bike, or maybe he shouldn't have committed to that overtake when he did, simply because, again, in his mind, he has to try to prove a point or something like that. And I think that that's sort of what happens again with like a Rudy von Berg. Rudy's a great athlete who we've seen have a number of less than stellar performances, and at some point that they almost seem to be chasing the result. And by chasing the result, they're putting themselves in situations where more bad stuff, like it's almost like the gamble of, well, I need to chase the result, so I'm going to do things that I maybe wouldn't normally do. If it pays off, great. But if it doesn't pay off, it's just another problem. Like, I mean, Vincent Louis is an athlete that I would have put in this category. He got injured at the Olympics and he sort of had a bumpy return, got injured this year. He's come back and he's won Bermuda. And it's like, fuck, okay, Vince is back. And all that other stuff doesn't matter. But all these other guys that have had bumpier, ups and downs and stuff, I do wonder what's going on. And I think, like I said, a few of them need to sort of. I heard that Sam's racing and like he's now going to go do that 70.3 that Lionel Sanders is doing. It's the one in California, India Wells or whatever it is. And I'm like, mate, no, stop.
Yeah, simmer down. Just simmer down.
Take a couple of weeks off, reset, write this year off as a fuck up, not on your part, just a fuck of a year. And go, okay, let's get going again next year. Let's look at what I can do to set myself up for success. Again, easy for me to say. I might be completely off the mark. But I do think that there's a few athletes this year who are sort of treading water. And it's not necessarily their fault, but I think that they can be doing more to try to get themselves out of it. Because there's a number of athletes that I think are capable of a lot more than what we've seen from them this year.
I agree. I mean, I missed the midsection of that because I was hunting around for my laptop charger. So I didn't realize it was dying on me. Yeah, I imagine it was stirring and rousing, and a lot of people have grabbed for their TT bikes or decided to take 2 weeks off.
Take 2 weeks off, mate. Anyway, Cozumel. Anyway, as I said, I don't really have a lot to say about this race. What's interesting is Lisa Norden got off the bike with a 22-minute lead over Garut's Freyde, who caught her at 35 kilometers into the marathon. She went on to win the race with a 2-hour 54 marathon and an overall time of 8:40:47. Lisa Non was in second, 8:46:36.
22 minutes getting off T2, man. You'd have a bit of confidence behind you at that point, wouldn't you? You'd be like, I've got 22 minutes here. It's almost a minute. It's almost a minute a mile.
Yeah. Like it's a big difference. And then in the men's race, Magnus came out of the water 2 minutes behind leaders, rode to the front, got off the bike with a minute 36 lead over Peter Heinrich, who pulled out of the race at the 7K mark of the marathon. At 28 Ks, Magnus was 6 minutes 13 clear of Jan van Berkel, who was running his way through the field. Magnus held on to win with 7:50:41. Second place, Jan van Berkel, 7:53:20. Third place, Fernando Toldi, 7:54. Now, what's interesting, again, congratulations, Magnus won his first Ironman branded event. He won Challenge Roth this year, but this is his first Ironman branded event. But I know that Magnus was going into this race trying to try to beat Kristian's record. Well off the mark. Like we're talking, 29, almost half an hour difference. Do you think that's all about conditions? Because the swim was a bit slower, we know, but do you think that the conditions can play that big a mark? Or is this the first opportunity we've seen to show the gap between a Kristian and, I would put Magnus in that top echelon, but is the gap really that big? Like, what do you think this race shows? Or is it just that Magnus was fucked from a long year and wasn't, I don't know. What do you think?
Kristian set that record in a different sort of year. The racing hadn't been quite as it was. It's a big gap, though. The swim was probably a bit slower, and Magnus is I think it shows there's a gap between Kristian and the rest here in terms of where Magnus is as an athlete and where they are. I don't think we can read into it too much because conditions do play a part.
Oh, but it's fun, mate. It's fun to read into it.
It is. I don't know. It's quite the difference, isn't it? It's not an insignificant amount of time that Kristian was faster than Magnus Ditlev on this day. So it would be interesting to talk to Magnus about it, and because he won the race by nigh on 3 minutes. So it's not like Magnus went in to beat Kristian's record, was 29 minutes behind him, but finished fifth because everyone else was almost as fast. It was almost like the whole field was slower. So, there's conditions do play a part.
But I think you just made and this is something that I hadn't considered. You're right. Like you look at when Kristian raced it last year, there hadn't been a world title race.
Exactly.
We hadn't not only had one, we had two. Like there'd been a lot less races, and it was Kristian's first Ironman. Like again, maybe that's valid. I mean, the things that I watched this and sort of got me concerned was, we've both said that we think Magnus will win Kona. I think he ran a 3-hour marathon here, like 2:59 or something. Like it was not a Magnus marathon. Like we think of Magnus 2:40 quite consistently. This is the second hot race he's done where he has really struggled. I said struggle. He still won the thing on the run. And I'm starting to go, maybe we're going to see another athlete who might actually just, the conditions in Kona might not suit him. Dallas, he was great, but it's a very different
Kona's a different beast. It's a different beast. Magnus is a European athlete. I know that he's not a European athlete, but you look at our boss on the podcast, Chris McCormack, he could win Ironman all over the world, but when he went to Kona, he came up against a wall, won it twice, raced it lots, almost always the favorite going in the years he raced, but not often managing to get across that line in first place. You might see Magnus become an athlete like that when he's going over and dominating something like Roth, or he's winning these races, but then when he goes to Kona, something different happens. But we're quite early in his career to be saying things like that. So, he's only done Kona once. He's got many, many more opportunities to prove that theory wrong.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's guaranteed yet, but it was the first time where I thought, because again, on paper, you'd look at Magnus, really tall guy, Danish, European, Scandinavian, not a guy you'd assume you wouldn't expect him to do well in the heat. And so this time when I saw it, and again, I think I was expecting him to run slower than normal, but I don't think I expected him to run that slow. So that I was like, okay, maybe he's not maybe the heat is a bit more of an issue than I think we realized, because this sort of run is probably more what I would have expected from Magnus 12 months ago. At the end of 2021, where we sort of saw him sort of starting to find form, with some middle distance races, but he was still kind of capable of that blow up on the run a little bit. This reminds me a bit more of that Magnus than the other. And again, maybe it is just he's also had a very big year this year with all the races that he's done. But yeah, I did look at it and go, oh, that's a little bit, I don't know. So yeah. Anyway, Cozumel, much slower than last year. Much slower than last year.
Much slower. I mean, conditions will play a part there, but I think accumulated fatigue across the year is a thing because, Kristian came at it from a very different angle.
These guys have all had such big years this year. Like, I still don't understand how Kristian's doing what he's doing. And speaking of Kristian doing what he's doing, we have a big race coming up this weekend. I think it is one of the races I am most excited about this year, and that is the World Triathlon Championship Series Grand Final in Abu Dhabi. Now, what we're going to do quickly, mate, is we're going to talk about the current position or the rankings based on their fucking complicated point system that they have. But currently, the way things stand is first place is Georgia Taylor Brown on 3,925 points. Second place, Flora Duffy, 3,855.63 points. Why? Third place, Beth Potter, 3,368.35 points. Fourth place, Laura Lindemann, 3,200.73 points. Fifth place, Taylor Knibb, 3,189.91 points. Goes all the way down to 10. But what's interesting is GTB currently leads Flora by 69.37 points. Were Duffy to finish ahead of Taylor Brown in any order, 1, 2, 3, or 4, she wins the thing. Beyond that, it gets a little bit more tricky as the difference between 5th and 6th points in Abu Dhabi is just below the current advantage of the Brit. And so a 5th for the Bermudan would require GTB to finish 7th or lower. But basically what we're looking at in the women's race in Abu Dhabi is a head-to-head for the World Triathlon crown. So that means whoever wins out of Georgia Taylor Brown or Flora Duffy is probably going to be our world champion after this weekend, and I cannot fucking wait to see it, mate, because this means it's the second head-to-head race we've had in about a month for a series title, where we had it between Taylor Spive and Georgia Taylor Brown in Super League, and now we've got it between Georgia Taylor Brown and Flora Duffy here. What do you think is going to happen?
It's going to be cool, isn't it? Because ultimately, things get a little bit more interesting, like you say, when you drop out of those first, fourth, fifth, sixth positions, but I think on a 99.9% of the time, both those athletes are going to be in the top 5. So you're going to have a head-to-head race between those two. And I love it because I think Georgia Taylor Brown will take this. That's the way I see it. I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, we'll see what happens. But I think Georgia's got the wind in her sails. She's the championship leader. I think that she's a class athlete, and I think she's got what it takes to see it through on a day like this. Why we've got decimal places on a world championship point system, I don't fucking know, but we have. It makes no sense. Doesn't it? Yeah,
it's so stupid. I disagree with you. I think we're going to see Flora Duffy take this away, and I think that's because she beat her in the Commonwealth Games, and not a little bit, destroyed her. Like, that move on the bike was phenomenal, and it was just like, okay, it's all over Red Rover. But then we saw Flora come back from 70.3 year olds, go to Bermuda last week, obviously 2 weeks ago, home ground advantage, and do what she did. I think Flora's got this one, to be honest, and I think we're going to see Flora.
I think what the point you just made about her doing that move on the bike, I think that's going to have left a taste in Georgia Taylor Brown's mouth, and she's going to be coming into this looking to make a point. We haven't seen them head to head as much as we wanted to this year. There have been races where one have raced and the other hasn't, and I think this is an opportunity for Georgia to say, no, I'm still here.
The other thing that's worth noting as well, so Maya Kingma, we know has had some ankle problems since she had that little injury in Bermuda a couple of days before the race. It's not impacting Maya's swim or bike, but it is impacting her run. And I think we're going to see Maya absolutely go for it on the bike. And this is a technical course. It's on the F1 course, so there's lots of twists and turns. It's not really climbs, but it's not, it's got that gnarly descent down into the tunnel underneath and stuff. I think we're going to see Maya really attack this, and that's going to suit athletes like Taylor Knibb, and I think Flora Duffy. I think Georgia Taylor Brown could go with, but it's probably maybe going to cost Georgia a little bit more than it would cost a Flora. And then that's the thing. Taylor Knibb's another one who we don't know Taylor could be right up there, or she could be a little bit back. I'm still not as convinced. I think Taylor Knibb in a 70.3 race at the moment is almost a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, agreed.
But at the short WTCS stuff, I still think it's not a sure thing. And I just think, looking at the way the race is going to go I really think it's going to be Georgia will try to shut down Flora, but that effort to do that is probably going to cost her just a little bit more. Like it's almost like even though she's leading, I feel like she's the one with the pressure on her a little bit, if that makes sense. Like I think Flora probably has she's Flora Duffy, for Christ's sake, gold medalist.
Yeah, look,
reigning
she's
champion.
got the proven I can beat you behind her this year
Mm.
as well. When I'm racing you, I can beat you type thing. And when it's a head to head, it doesn't matter who's leading at this point. It's more of a psychological thing than it is a tangible impact on the race, because it, like you say, with Duffy's to finish ahead of Taylor Brown in any of first, second, third, or fourth, then she takes it. So it's not like she's got to think, well, I've got to be here. Maths thinking. It's just, no, I beat you, I win. And that's for an athlete like Flora Duffy, that's quite a simple equation. She's good at that sort of thing.
So how does Georgia beat her? In your mind, what does Georgia Taylor Brown need to do in this race to make sure that she does finish ahead of Flora Duffy?
She uses the fact that the bike course is an F1 track like that, and you're going to have strong bikers trying to attack. She uses that as an escort to stay with the front of the race, and she beats her on the run. Because you won't have, on a race like this, Flora Duffy's a very strong biker and will want to pull away. But a race course like this negates that a little bit, because you'll have other bikers who are very strong, like Amaya Kingma, who are able to go with her a little bit easier because they're not relying on a sort of technical sort of bike course where Flora's going, it's not just power, it's the fact that I'm a fucking good biker that's getting me away, or this climb where I'm attacking on. She's going to have other strong athletes going with her who will make it easier for Georgia Taylor Brown to be at the front of the race, and then Georgia will beat her on the run. Because Flora will burn her matches trying to get away on that bike course.
That's a good point, actually, because I would think if you put them in a foot race, I think Flora's got Georgia's number, to be honest. I think if you put those two, if they get off the bike together, let's say they've both just sat in and let Maya and Taylor do all the work, and it comes down to a straight foot race, which it very well could. I think you're right. I don't think that Flora will want that to be the case. Not because she can't, but just because of how she races. I would see this going where Flora just sits on Georgia's shoulder and just goes, look what she did at the Olympics. Just went kaboom, see you later. Come with me if you want. They couldn't.
Yeah, possibly. Like a sensible option would be to sit on the shoulder and think, all I've got to do is take you on the run. So I'll just let you burn your matches. But if in the race it transpires that Georgia's not burning any matches and Flora Duffy's just sitting there, then what are you thinking in your mind? You're thinking, well, she's going to be fresh as well. We can't just sit here and both be fresh at each other. But also you've got to remember that the rest of the race is going on around them as well. The other athletes aren't thinking we're racing for Georgia and Flora. Yeah. We're racing for ourselves. If she's sitting on Georgia's shoulder and watching the race go away from her, she's watching a chance to win go away from her as well. And then she's got to react. If I was Flora Duffy, I'd take this by the scruff of the neck, mate. I wouldn't leave it to things around me happening the way I want them to. I'd be like, no, I've got to go and dominate like I normally do. And Georgia Taylor Brown has to respond to that in the best way possible. It's going to be a hell of a race. Mate. I'm really excited.
Oh, it's exciting. Talking about this right now, I'm like, actually, I can feel my excitement levels going up for this race. In the men's race as well, it's not quite as close, but there is still a few people in the run-in. So currently leading is Hayden Wilde in 3,850 points. Second place is Alex C on 3,732 points. Third place, Leo Berger, 3,491 points. Fourth place, Yella Gaines, 3,314 points. Fifth place, Vincent Louis in 3,097 points. Basically, Wilde needs to lose and Yee needs to finish a few spots ahead of him. Yee doesn't need to win, just the top six, and have enough places between him and Hayden Wilde. How's this going to go? Because unlike Bermuda, Hayden's actually racing this time. So we're going to have Yee versus Wilde versus Vincent versus Leo versus Yele versus everyone. Like, how do you see this race going?
Yeah, I mean, I think advantage Hayden, but we are going to see an interesting race because, like, we've seen a step up from Yee in terms of his ability to balance the three sports. The swim, bike, and run. I think Yee's chances of being up there at the front of the race are greater than they would have been maybe 12, 18 months ago. But I see advantage Hayden here. I like to think that Hayden will ride this momentum into this race and finish off the season getting his championship finish. I don't know though, mate. I find it very difficult to call this one because he's that kind of athlete that's capable of just going, done. I outran you like a motherfucker. And Hayden is that kind of athlete who is capable of getting caught behind or missing a pack and not managing to get himself into the position he needs to be in. But I say 9 times out of 10, Hayden will be where he needs to be, and will fight his way through the pack to be where he needs to be to get the result he needs, unless something dramatic happens.
I think you've made a lot of sense. I feel like Hayden doesn't yet possess the skill set to do what he needs to do to defeat Yi. I think Yi is more getting in his way or doing like him, maybe putting in too much of an effort on the bike that costs his run. So it's more Yi's error that we've seen him sort of have lesser performances. Because again, I think Yi is the best athlete in the field this year, and I just have this vision in my head of Hayden doing all that work and Hayden and getting off the bike and Yi just sit on his shoulder like we saw in Yokohama and just dropping him at the end. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Yi win, but Hayden win the series overall because his place is so high. But as I said last time, an athlete like a Vincent Luis, who is so strong across all three disciplines, means that it ain't going to go the way it's gone earlier this season without a Vincent Luis. We're going to have that group at the front pushing the pace on the bike. And hopefully Vince goes out there to try to win this thing. Tyler Mislachuk's another guy that has a lot to prove this race, and he's talking like he is in the form of his life, running really, really well. That front group we could actually see the front group maybe stay away for once, because every time Hayden rides through, pulls the guys with him, gets off the bike, and they do their thing. Maybe if that group really commit to it, because they know what Hayden's racing for, we could actually see Hayden really burn some matches to try to catch up. But I honestly think we're probably going to see, in my mind, Alex Yee wins this thing. Whether he wins the World Championship will just depend on where Hayden finishes. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Hayden win the whole thing overall, but maybe lose this race.
Yeah, I think that's through my wordiness. That's pretty much where I was getting to. It's the mathematics. The mathematics required for Yi to win the series is a bit fiddly, and I think Yi is capable of winning this race, and Hayden just finishing where he needs to finish to get the championship. But I mean, stranger things have happened at sea, mate. Hayden could come out and be like, you know what? Now's the time.
I think I can honestly name 6 or 7 athletes who I could see winning this race this weekend. And literally, it's Hayden, it's Alex, it's Leo, it's Yele, it's Vincent, it's...
So who's your call then? Don't fucking 6 or 7 me. Fucking give me your call. Who's going to win? Did you?
Alex Yee.
All right.
Okay. I think Alex Yee, and my wild card pick's Tyler Mislachuk.
Okay.
They're, again, I think it's just going to, again, depend how the action... I'm very curious to see the impact that Vincent Luis has, because we know that he can be devastating in that swim. And Tyler's a very good swimmer, so you'd expect Tyler to come out of the water with or just behind Vincent. If he plays his cards right, go with him.
Then simply because the man has had the worst fucking luck of anyone I've ever known in my entire life, I'm going to say Tyler Mislachuk deserves this win. Tyler Mislachuk's going to win this race.
I definitely, again, I would love to see it, and I think he's 100% in a position to do so. Because again, I've said this to Tyler so many times. Like, I can't wait to see it when your luck turns, because you're right. He has had more bad luck in the last 18 months.
And it's not even coming from a place of like trying to find reasons why he hasn't performed because we work with him and stuff. But just like, it's just been unreal. The stuff that guy's had to face this year.
He had to replace his rear derailleur after Bermuda because it shit itself. The crashes in Super League. And then, he was telling me, and I didn't realize this, but his final run split in Neom, the grand final, he outran Hayden, he outran Johnny, he outran basically everybody. So like, Tyler is in great run form at the moment. He likes the heat, and apparently it's going to be quite hot in Abu Dhabi. So he's definitely one to watch. I really enjoyed World Triathlon racing this year, and this is like, I'm definitely going to be tuning in for this one. I can't wait to see it.
Same. I'll be paying a lot of attention to this weekend.
Well, James Bale, if people want to watch along with us, they should go to mxendurance.com/podcast, where they can sign up for our podcast membership, get access to our community. We do watch along chats on WhatsApp. We've got a Discord group. You also get the bonus podcasts that we record. The last one I did with Macca was 5. We've got another one coming up very, very soon. Continues the podcast to be doing the podcast, all that good stuff. You get a whole suite of benefits, and you'll be the first to know about those changes that James mentioned at the start, which are all good changes. You just, again, need to head to mxendurance.com/podcast. But Jimbo, if they want to find out other things, where do they need to go?
If you want to find out more about MX Endurance, head to mxendurance.com or search MX Endurance on Facebook or at MX Endurance on Twitter or Instagram. If you want to follow me, I'm at bale.james85 on Instagram, or you can follow Tim at T414 on Instagram. Jump onto iTunes, give the show a review. It really helps us out, and it's super, easy. If you like what we're doing, tell a friend, help us grow. Got any suggestions, guests, comments, or criticisms? Send an email to podcast@mxendurance.com.
Mate, a pleasure as always. I'm going to go get a massage because that's what you do in Thailand. Till next week, mate. Have a good one.
Take it easy, bro.